In the Bible in a Year podcast, Father Mike Schmitz takes listeners through the entire Bible in 365 days. He also offers reflections, prayers, and insights. The podcast has proven to be a hit with 170 million downloads. Recently, our own Tracy Sabol spoke with Father Schmitz for a two-part interview. In part one, he tells us what prompted him to begin the project.
And joining me now is Father Mike Schmitz, host of the Bible in a Year podcast. Father, great to see you. So talk to us more about your podcast and what inspired you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's great to see you too. And it's been a gift this last year. I think what inspired the whole thing, how it started was a number of things. You know, in 2020, there was this pandemic and I found myself, so I often take in information audibly, right? So I'll read as much as I can, but I just find that I listen to podcasts, I listen to YouTube videos, listen to talks, and I try to be really exclusive and really picky about I want to listen to wise voices, like things that are really going to help me build me up. But even when I was doing that, one of the things I found is I found myself being constantly distracted. Like I kept looking for the next voice and the next piece of wisdom and the next kind of insight into what's going on in our culture, what's going on in the church. And I found myself being distracted. And then I also, in the midst of kind of some chaos in our world, I found myself being distressed. And those are the two kind of key words that kind of started a lot for me. I was distracted and distressed. And then I was also at the same time reading the book of Judges in the Old Testament. And as I was praying through that book, and I'd read it before, obviously, and prayed through it before, but it just struck me as here is the people of Israel, here's God's chosen people, and they're going through this cycle of unfaithfulness, and God raises up a judge, and they have some direction, they have some way to go, move forward, and they get back on their feet and then fall again. And just that cycle that would happen, a chapter would be an entire generation. And you think, oh my gosh, one of the key lines in the book of Judges is, at that time, there was no king in Israel and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And just the chaos that was surrounding normal people who were chosen by God, who had to live in that world of distraction and distress. And I thought, you know what I think we need? I think we need the Bible. I think what I need to hear the Bible. And since as I said, I like to take in my information through my ears, I thought, what would be a good idea? A good idea would be to have a podcast where we just read the Bible every day for a whole year and get through the entire thing and have this, not just the wisdom of the world, but the wisdom of the word that could just really reshape our lens and really reframe the way we're looking at the chaos and looking at the crises in our culture.
Yeah, and it really has resonated with people, especially with everything that we're going through right now. Can you talk a little bit more about how this podcast and stories from the Bible can really give people hope, again, especially as we're going through this really tough time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think that, so there's this book that came out of University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota, and it is called Moving from Christendom to an Apostolic Age of Mission. And so in the past, up until recently, I think Christians and Catholics specifically would have a biblical worldview. That when we looked at the world, we would actually be looking at it through the lens that's been shaped by these stories, or even the story that God has revealed over the course of 73 books in the Old and New Testaments. And one of the things we've lost, this book points it out, and I can see this in the people I talk with. I see this even in myself. We have so many, as I said, voices that are just constantly in competition to shape our worldview, to shape how we see people, the way we see God, the way we see ourselves, the way we see the point of life, that we need to rediscover and reclaim a biblical worldview. And so I think that's the main goal of this podcast. And one of the things you find when you read the Bible is even those people who were led by the Lord, those who were called and chosen by the Lord, none of them lived in lives of certainty. None of them lived lives of safety. None of them lived lives of security, but every one of them lived. I mean, even to think about, here we have this season leading up to Christmas where you have Mary, and we have been reading recently in the daily mass readings, the angel Gabriel visits Mary. And how does that story go down? Well, it goes down where Gabriel says, here's God's plan. Mary asks her clarifying question, how can this happen since I have no relations with the man? Gabriel clarifies the answer, and she says, "Behold, I'm the handmaid of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to your word." And then the very next line is, "Then the angel departed from her." And so she has no idea. All she knows is, okay, God's called you to be the mother of his son. She says yes, and then he leaves. And talk about a place of uncertainty, a lack of security, lack of like, I do have no idea what's going to happen next. And that's the story. That's where you and I get to live every single day. Sometimes we can, I don't know, maybe not all of us, but many of us think that in order to live joyful lives, in order to live lives that are absolutely full, we have to know what's coming next. And we don't. One of the things that going through the Bible like this reminds us of is we're always going to be uncertain. We're always going to be in a place of lack of safety, a lack of security. But God's always going to be with us in that uncertainty and in that insecurity.
All right, now later in the newscast, Father Schmitz tells us what project he'll work on once the Bible in a Year podcast is done later this week.